2:32, and Rishi Sunak says the new energy department he's created will reduce the UK's dependency on overseas supplies in the wake of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Grant Shapps is going to lead the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, which he says will focus on cutting bills and emissions as well as dependence on international suppliers. It's part of a mini reshuffle which sees Greg Hands become Conservative chairman. Well, let's speak to Nick Pearce, director at the Institute for Policy Research at the University of Bath, was also former head policy at Downing Street during Gordon Brown's premiership. A very good afternoon to you, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So what do you make of these new departments? Will they make a difference?
Well, actually, the structure looks quite similar to that which Gordon Brown had in my time when I was in Number 10, when we had a department for energy and climate change and we had a department for science and innovation. It makes some sense, I think, to create a department focused on energy and climate change. It's called Energy and Net Zero, and that indicates, I think, that the transition to a net zero economy is an important one, and putting the business department together with the trade department makes some sense, as does putting science and technology, innovation together. Ultimately, of course, it's the policies that you have that matter most. If you get the right departments and institutions in place, that can help you make better policy. But, you know, in the end, whether we see the kind of change we need on net zero or on science and technology will depend on the policies these ministers, these new secretaries of state put in place.
Well, the government's frequently said it wants to be a science superpower. It wants the UK to be a science superpower. Is this putting science at the forefront of the government's plans, do you think?
Well, there's quite a lot of... This
is the creation of the new Department of Science, Innovation and Technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the idea that we'll be a science superpower is rhetoric, really. I mean, it is important that you have a strong science base. It's important that the scientific research you do can be translated into products and services. But we don't need to pretend that we're some sort of world-beating nation that only does the best science and we're some sort of superpower to achieve those sorts of goals. I think it makes sense to put digital technologies and digital issues that were previously in the culture and sport and media department in with science and technology and innovation. That makes sense. It's a useful change. The most important one of these, though, is the creation of an energy and net zero department, I think.
Yeah. And what about the cost of creating these new departments? The figures, according to research from the Institute for Government, they reckon that the cost of creating new departments ranges from 50 million to 34 million. I realise that's a big range, but it's expensive, isn't it? Will it be worth it in the long run?
Yes. Yeah, you definitely do get some cost to these things. I mean, in the end, the civil servants in different units move around, you know, the buildings they're in get new nameplates and all the rest of it. There is some transitional costs. There are costs to rebranding and all the rest of it. They're fairly small in the scheme of things. I mean, when put against the overall volumes of departmental spending, it's pretty small beer. But nonetheless, it's not negligible. And so you shouldn't do it often. And also, if you pretend that by changing your Whitehall department, somehow you're changing policy or outcomes, then I think you have got a problem. To be fair to the Prime Minister, I don't think he is pretending. I think he's trying to align Whitehall with the things that he considers important. But you don't want to be doing this every other year. And some departments, like the business department, have been reshuffled and reconfigured, you know, endlessly. And it's more important to get the right policy framework in place and to stick with it.
Why is it taking a war on the European continent for the government to get serious about energy security? Shouldn't we have been thinking about this for a long time?
Well, I think there's an argument that had we made a more rapid and deeper transition to low carbon and renewable energy, then we would have been less dependent, particularly on gas and international gas markets, and that getting rid of gas storage facilities, for example, the Rough facility, so-called, has made us more vulnerable to those movements in prices and to supply constraints in world markets. So I think the argument for energy security is best made not as becoming independent in the production of energy, because you could do that by, coal mining, for example, some countries going back to using more coal. It's best done by developing, implementing, using renewable energy, solar, wind, and other forms. And that's the best argument for security, I think.
Well, great to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on LBC News. That is Nick Pearce, the Director at the Institute for Policy Research at the University of Bath and also a former Head of Policy at Downing Street during Gordon Brown's premiership. Thank you for your time this afternoon.